بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. All very subdued. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah. Still a few hours before night, before we doze off. So this is the first of the circles continuing after Ramadan. We've had about a 5 or 6 week break. And as I said some weeks before Ramadan, that it would be good that after Ramadan we should try to pick up the focus of our learning. And I do appreciate that not every Muslim is a talib al-ilm in a formal sense, a student of the sacred sciences in a formal sense. And the way of a student of knowledge of the sacred sciences of Islam would be that he or she would learn perhaps Arabic and Arabic grammar, and then they'll learn the foundation of the required sciences, the foundations of fiqh and its foundations, usul al-hadith, some foundations and bits of tafsir, aqidah, usul al-deen. And by that way, the idea is that they will take knowledge from the people of knowledge, who will know best how to give out the knowledge, as a mother knows best what food to give to a babe. And by that way they would build up their foundations, and on these foundations they would be built the house or the building of Islam, because the foundations are strong. But most Muslims are not formal students of the religious sciences. Most Muslims, traditionally scholars have classified the ummah into three categories. There is either the ulama, the learned ones, the scholars, or the other end is the amat al-nas, the lay people, the general public. And in between, there are the tullab al-ilm, the students of knowledge. Some students who are learning the sacred sciences of Islam, they are just like the lay people, in that they have only started recently. So between them and the lay people, there's very little difference. Some students of knowledge who have studied well and are very seasoned are closer to being ulama, scholars, than they are lay people. And there are people in between. Traditionally, one knew exactly where one was. Here I am, let's just say I graduated from Azhar and I got license or ijazah from my teachers to teach other people the Islamic sciences, or here I am as a lay person, I'm working in the rice field, I plant cotton or whatever, that's my job, I'm a farmer, I'm a candlestick maker, and therefore I just listen to knowledge on Jummah days. I try to read the Quran when I can at home, I try to do good and charity, but that's it, I don't know much. And then here I am, that I'm going to the local mosque in my little village or town, I'm sitting with the ulama and I'm beginning to learn step by step, bit-tadarruj, gradually, bit by bit, the Islamic sciences. Once I exhaust the knowledge of the scholars of my local area, I may move on to one of the larger centers of learning in the great cities of Islam, whereby there will be more scholars and they're at a higher level. But people generally knew their place. The scholar knew that they weren't like the lay people, that they were allowed to give religious rulings and fatwas and ahkam. The student of knowledge generally, because they were under the discipline of their teachers. So if they began to step over their level, the teacher would put them right. Okay? Sometimes in gentle ways, or quite often in gentle ways, sometimes a little bit more than gentle, just so that they get the point. Because knowledge is serious. And the lay people would know. SubhanAllah, I'm just a candlestick maker, I'm a trader, I'm a farmer. You know, what can I possibly say? Yes, I can tell you that there are 5 daily prayers, drinking is haram. I can tell you these things that every Muslim should know. But beyond that, I couldn't tell you that this hadith is weak or not. I can just say, my sheikh said. I went to the mosque and one day I heard the person on the pulpit, the alim on the pulpit, say something about this issue. That's all they could say. They couldn't say with any certainty. Today we're in a very awkward situation. And that's largely due to the great revolution of the internet. And human beings we've had this revolution before, a similar revolution before. 5,000 odd years ago, about 4,500 to 5,000 years ago, or thereabouts, maybe slightly less than that, there was the writing revolution. Writing in human history came about. We're not quite sure exactly how and for what purpose, although the Sumerians, of which we have some written records of, say, about 3,500 BC, so that's almost 5,000, or 3,000 BC, that's 5,000 years ago. They seem to have used clay tablets with markings, lines, and it seems to be for business, counting, that look, I sold him 2 sheep and so much weight of corn or barley, and now he owes me so much. And it was recorded on these clay tablets. I'm sure that there are other reasons for writing. We're already speaking, alhamdulillah. But writing comes there. And that kind of revolutionizes things. Because now when you write, you can pass on ideas to a future generation. At the moment, I can tell you my idea, I can tell you a lot, but if we all kind of die from, God forbid, a sudden famine or an earthquake, the idea is gone. No one's there to carry it on to posterity, to the next generation. You put it down in writing, it could get, and that writing could travel to other places maybe, or that writing may survive, depending on how durable it is. And there's a possibility ideas can live on beyond the age of the person themselves. So that was a revolution then. And human civilizations continued to grow. The challenges was, at that time, the elite learned how to read and write, and most human beings didn't. The Prophet ﷺ, it's remarkable, when he in his prophethood, he emphasized reading and writing so much. Now remember, the whole world is generally illiterate. Priests can read and write, okay? Some top-notch people, kings and rulers can read and write, but by and large, the average person couldn't read and write. The Prophet ﷺ emphasized reading so much, and writing so much. We have the Iqra tradition, that the Quran is, we read the Quran, but also the Prophet ﷺ went on to say that if a non-Muslim captive, we capture them in war, as people are captured in war, and are treated well. If a non-Muslim captive can read 10 people to write, can teach 10 people to read and write, then that person, he has earned his freedom. Why? Because, subhanAllah, we could ransom them as the laws of war used to be. And we could get, however many hundreds and thousands of dinars or dirhams. But teaching 10 people to read and write, that's just priceless. And so the Sunnah encourages that. The next revolution came, there is a point here actually. The next revolution came with printing. So history tells us that in the mid-1400s of the Common Era, of the era that of the calendar that we generally use globally, somewhere in Germany, Gutenberg, actually I think, the printing press was first made. And what this allowed to do, this allowed writing to be mass produced. So here now I write 4 or 5 pages. Instead of giving it to 10 people to copy out with the hand, there is always a chance of a copyist error. Okay? If it's a large book, it's even harder to do. And then from there, people can buy it or they can recopy it and whatever. Very difficult to produce 1,000 copies that way, let alone 5,000, 10,000. Well, the printing press comes along and revolutionizes that. And human writing, then is allowed to proliferate and spread in such a huge way. Now, there's a lot of history to it and some issues, but unfortunately what happens is that some of the leading ulama of the time in the 15th century of the Common Era, they, for whatever reason, decided that, well, whilst the Bible was being printed in the new printing presses en masse, okay, in their thousands upon thousands in 15th century Europe, the ulama thought best that since the printing involves putting block letters, metallic letters, and then slamming the sheet or the metal onto the sheets, they found that seems to be very disrespectful to the Quran because it's been slammed like that. And so there were fatwas that one shouldn't do that with religious literature. Whatever benefits there are through the adab, through being careful about having proper adab or respect towards the Quran, the negativity was that Europe began to embrace ideas and the literacy rate increased because now they had access to all sorts of material via the printing press. That was the next revolution. I think it was a few hundred years later that the ulama decided, no, actually we will allow the printing press into the Muslim lands. But by that time, Europe had a huge head start. And then, round about the mid-90s, we come into the internet. So Tim Berners-Lee gifts the world the idea of the World Wide Web and doesn't put a stake on it and says, no, let it be used freely. And then that opens up even huger possibilities. Now you don't even have to go down to your local library. You don't have to go for a manuscript, that you can literally get most things online. One of them, and each of these revolutions had their positives, which are clear and obvious, but had their negatives as well. Rather than going through a history of positives and negatives, let's just get to the point that I wanted to, which is simply that nowadays we have amongst the Muslims, it's like, oh, mashallah, he's a knowledgeable brother. Why is he knowledgeable? Because he knows a few things, but actually he's not actually very knowledgeable. Okay, his knowledge is barely above infant level. But in the land of the blind, they say that the one-eyed man is king. And what's beginning to happen now is a lot of people, day by day, a growing number of Muslims feel content that, you know what, I have a decent Islamic education. For no other reason than I go and read bits and pieces on the internet on a regular basis. But that's not a decent Islamic education in any sense of the word. Why? Because I choose what I'm going to read. I choose what I'm not going to read. I don't even know that what I'm reading is sound and orthodox and authoritative. And I have no ideas what foundations I'm missing and what foundations I'm not. I don't even know that what I've read, have I understood? Let's just assume it's all, I was going to say kosher, it's all good and orthodox and authoritative. I don't know, therefore, but have I understood it correctly? Because reading is one thing, and fahm, understanding, is another thing entirely. The Prophet ﷺ says in the authentic hadith that those of you who hear and preserve what I say, memorize what I say, then perhaps the one to whom it's transmitted understands better than the one who initially heard it. To just show to us that there's a difference between the one who memorizes and the one who understands. And they're not always the same. Some people who have poor memories, but really excellent understanding. And there are some people who have excellent memories, but poor understanding, and there are people in the middle. Okay? And so what's happened now is that day by day, Muslims are now open to so much religious knowledge on the internet, but there's no guidance, there is no step-by-step learning, there is no sound Islamic education. Now, once upon a time, that's not a problem, because I knew I didn't have a sound Islamic education. I don't know, he or she does. That's fine. I knew my ignorance. Okay? He who knows not, and knows that he knows not, is a child teaching. This is the saying of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu. But he who knows not, and knows not that he knows not, is a fool. So shun him. He who knows not, he who doesn't know, and doesn't know that he doesn't know. And then he thinks he knows, but he doesn't know. Khalas, you couldn't get worse ignorance than this, because that level of ignorance, which the ulama, the scholars call jahl al-murakkab, compounded ignorance, not jahl basit, simple ignorance. I don't know what day is it, what do I do, day do we call this, I don't know what day we call this, oh we call it, in English we call this Friday. Oh, Jazakallah, thank you, Friday. Fantastic, I didn't know, I knew I didn't know, he's someone that knows, I trust. Friday, fantastic. Okay? But compounded ignorance is, oh yeah, it's Wednesday, right? No, it's Friday. Wednesday. You know, look how big my beard is. I know what I'm talking about. What can you do? There's no, barring Allah, there's no cure for that level of stubbornness and ignorance. A lot of what happens today is precisely that. And this then becomes the challenge, one of the greatest challenges that Muslims collectively have to face. We have our own difficulties, personal difficulties, sitting there and trying to do an act of obedience there and trying to follow the sunnah there. We all have those challenges. But collectively, in the ummah at the moment, one of the biggest challenges is we have people who are confident that they know and they don't know. They know one thing, but they're ignorant of 10 or 12 others. And then the ulama just become, oh bro. The ulama, oh bro. Okay? Yeah bro. He's a knowledgeable bro. This one's a knowledgeable bro, and that's a knowledgeable bro. But between the bros, there's chalk and cheese, heaven and earth. That becomes the challenge of our time. How to deal with that? It's very difficult because it requires the person to be disciplined, and the ulama, the place of the ulama, the scholars, to be recognized. There is no quicker way of dismantling Islam and subverting its teachings than to change the station of the ulama, drag it down, or eliminate it. And we're in that process right now, in a level and a way that we've never experienced as an ummah. And each have to play their part. One of the misunderstandings that comes, it's a popular misunderstanding, not a political problem, but it's a popular misunderstanding, is that now I've done the 29, 30 days of Ramadan. And like Maulana Zia said in the khutbah today, okay, that in the last few nights of Ramadan, the morning prayer, the Fajr prayer lines were full, and the night prayer lines were full, and then the first day of Shawwal, the day of Eid, or the day after, the lines dwindle. For the simple reason that a lot of people that, I did my effort, hopefully I did all the odd nights, inshallah one of those nights is Laylatul Qadr, and I put myself into 5th gear. Some people, instead of saying I can now ease up but still continue, some people just ease up where the car literally stops. Right? So it's not like, let's just out of 5th gear, let's put it into 4th or 3rd. Let's just switch off the engine. Right? Because in their mind that, wow, look what I've done. I know what I've done. You know, subhanAllah, people don't know how much I prayed. And a lot of people have and done a lot of good. The ulama tell us that whatever we did in Ramadan by the fadl of Allah, never be complacent. So I want to just mention one or two verses in hadiths and one or two reflections. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in Surah Al-Mu'minun, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم والذين يؤتون ما آتوا وقلوبهم وجلة أنهم إلى ربهم راجعون والذين يؤتون ما آتوا وقلوبهم وجلة أنهم إلى ربهم راجعون. And those who give what they have given whilst their hearts wajila, whilst their hearts are fearful or tremble, they're scared. And those who give what they have given, and of charity, let's just say, but their hearts are fearful or tremble because they are to return to their Lord. Now, the Prophet ﷺ once recited that verse, and the lady Aisha radiallahu anha, may Allah be pleased with her, she was there when the Prophet ﷺ was reciting this ayah. And she said to the Prophet ﷺ, أَحُمُ الَّذِينَ يَزْنُونَ وَيَسْرِقُونَ وَيَشْرَبُونَ الْخَمْرِ. Are these people who give what they give and are fearful because they're going to return to Allah? Are these people who commit zina, who steal and who drink wine, and that's why they're fearful? Okay, because if you're sinful, you're going to be fearful. If Iman is there at some correct level in the heart, then when a sin is committed, when Allah is disobeyed, there's going to be some level of fear and remorse. That's going to hopefully drive us to make tawbah. We're in a dangerous position when we commit a sin and there is no worry, no grief, no remorse, because then nothing's going to drive us to change. Which is why, whatever happens, it's always better to keep the halal halal and haram haram, whether people can do it or not. Not, well, if we tell them the halal is halal, this halal is halal and haram is haram, let's stick with the haram. They won't be able to do it and we'll just be driving people away. Then if we start trying to begin to change, well, the haram is not really that much haram. Next week, well, the haram actually maybe it's not haram at all. And then 2 weeks later, actually the haram is actually halal. Okay? Then the deen, the religion has changed. But if the haram is haram, and yeah, but subhanAllah, yeah, sheikh, you keep telling me this, and I keep falling into this haram, and and you keep telling me there's no leeway, I've got no room to breathe. But at least one, the religion doesn't change. It gets preserved. There's no prophet after the Prophet. There's no, this is it, this is the Sharia, until the end of days. And two, there is always the hope that the individual, he or she, as long as the alim doesn't cause them to despair. Oh, you keep falling to the haram, you've got no hope. No. The alim is required, the scholar is required to tell the truth, but not make people despair. Yes, this is haram and you're struggling with it, but you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and even in your struggle, Allah will reward you. And inshallah ta'ala, Allah will give you the tawfiq one day, brother, that you will be able to keep the boundary on this issue, giving the hope of Allah's generosity and Allah's help and assistance, madad. So, Aisha radiallahu anha says that, Ya Rasulullah, are these people who sin, who drink and commit indecencies and whatever, this is why they give to Allah what they give and they're fearful of returning to their Lord? And listen to the answer of the Prophet. He says, La ya ibnat as-siddiq. No, O daughter of as-siddiq. O daughter of as-siddiq being Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. No, O daughter of Abu Bakr. وَلَكِنَّهُمُ الَّذِينَ يُصَلُّونَ وَيُصُومُونَ وَيَتَصَدَّقُونَ وَيَخَافُونَ أَلَّا يُتَقَبَّلَ مِنْهُمْ. These are are people who pray and fast and give in charity, but they fear that their deeds won't be accepted. Why do these people, described by the Prophet ﷺ, أَلَّا يُتَقَبَّلَ مِنْهُمْ, why do they feel that their deeds of praying and fasting in Ramadan and charity won't be accepted? Is it because mashallah, they've done tremendous deeds, but Allah thinks, oh, I think I won't accept it today? Is that the case? Why wouldn't their deeds be accepted? Is it because Allah just, I don't feel like I will accept it today? Or what's the reason?
Their intentions are allowed.
Their intentions, maybe? Okay. But just imagine intentions. Give me an example of, explain it to me. What do you mean, their intentions? Because these are people who prayed and fasted and given charity, and they're fearful that their deeds won't be accepted.
They are telling people that they are showing off or...
Okay, so their intentions could be corrupt, okay, which makes the very base of their action null and void, because riyā, showing off, is one of the greatest nullifiers of deeds. Okay, and we must be careful of riyā, of safeguarding ourselves from riyā, showing off in deeds. And the opposite of riyā, showing off, is what? What do we call the opposite of riyā? Showing off, doing acts to be seen by other people. What's the opposite? Ikhlas. Where the deed is done solely and purely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yuriduna wajhahu, seeking His face. Whereas the opposite of that riyā is deeds done, riyā from ra, to show. To show other people, look how pious I am, look how much charity I give, because I'm hoping to get some benefit from them. If not monetarily, then at least, the reputation. Okay, that's may Allah protect us. That's a very, that's one of the worst sins, but it's easy to fall into.
Maybe they expect that it's not because of my deed, it's because of Allah's rahmah. If He accepts my deed.
Okay, so going back to that, why are they fearful? Another reason could be not so much intentions, but I couldn't really perform the deed as Allah deserves. And it doesn't matter how well I do an act of prayer or fasting or any other ibadah, I could never do it in the way that is how Allah truly deserves it to be done. That really is, I fulfilled the haqq of His jalaliyah, I fulfilled His right. And I've just done the deed in whatever best way I can with good intention, but really, I know there is so much shortcoming in it. And it's only down to Allah's grace, Allah's rahmah, mercy, Allah's fadl, generosity, magnanimity, that the deed is accepted. This is what it means. These are people who know that they worship a generous Lord. You give something small to Allah, Allah will give you something big back. You give to Allah the best that you can, even though it's fractured, inshallah Allah will overlook the weaknesses and accept the best of your deeds. But also, they know that due to their deficiency, the deed may not be accepted. So in this case, they are fearful that they've done the deeds of praying and fasting and charity, but they've done it with such shortcomings, Allah won't accept it. The lesson we learn here is never be confident in our deeds, but rather hope and pray for Allah's acceptability or qubuliyah of our deeds. But until the day of judgment comes and judgment is done to every individual, how do I know that my deeds are accepted? How does one know that the prayers and the fasting and the dhikrs and the Quran of Ramadan has been accepted? We don't, it's not like Allah sends us a text message or an SMS or something. We don't have that kind of thing. You go and you give charity online, or you buy a book from Amazon. You get an online receipt, right? So at least they got the money, because that's why they sent the receipt. It's not quite like that in terms of our deeds. So how do we know? Our scholars have said from the earliest of times that there are amarat or alamat, there are signs that indicate or tell a person whether his or her deeds are accepted. And they say, if a person comes out of Ramadan in a better condition of iman, in a better spiritual condition, in a better position of obedience, state of obedience, than he or she came into Ramadan with, then that is a clear sign that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has accepted our deeds in Ramadan, and He has rewarded such deeds. He will reward it in hereafter as well, but He has rewarded with such deeds with that person being upon the path of istiqamah, being upright and walking the straight path in terms of fulfilling the commands, keeping away from the prohibitions. So someone who, for example, I wasn't even praying before Ramadan. Ramadan comes, they start their daily prayers, and Ramadan finishes, and mashallah, they are still praying their daily prayers. They don't leave their 5 daily prayers. This is Allah's way of telling them during their life on earth, "Oh my servant, who journeyed to me with whatever he or she could, I'm telling you, I have accepted your deeds. And I have drawn you closer to me, and I have turned your heart in my direction, my obedience upon my path." If a person was doing the prayers or whatever, but they find, for example, there were certain sins that I was struggling to keep away from, and alhamdulillah, Ramadan came and the devils got chained, and alhamdulillah, I was able, by the grace of Allah, to keep away from that sin. And then Ramadan went, and alhamdulillah, Allah still given me that tawfiq to keep away from that sin that I've struggled with. That's a sign. Because we do not do Allah a favor by being obedient to Him. But He lets our hearts journey towards the greatest thing that there ever is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To know Him, to have iman in Him, and to be given the grace, the tawfiq, to do deeds of obedience which pleases Him. There can be no greater delight, nor any greater treasure or gift than that. And now that the person's state after Ramadan is better than his or her state before Ramadan, they have a lot to rejoice over. Which is why then, going back to what Maulana Zia said in today's khutbah, it becomes quite alarming that if I became habitual of praying in the masjid, and for some people just praying, that Ramadan finishes and I'm no longer praying in the masjid, or worse, not praying. Because that is an alama, a sign, not like the first sign. That's a worrying sign. We won't say that, that's a sign that Allah hasn't accepted, because we don't want to make people despair. When we speak about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we should speak to people, we should speak about Allah in a way that always gives people the window of hope, without making them deluded. So we don't say Allah Kareem, Allah generous, so it doesn't matter if you sin, because that will lead them into delusion. Oh, it doesn't matter. But rather we say, look, Allah's generous or whatever, so if you repent to Him and change your ways, Allah's generous and He will always accept the broken-hearted. Okay? It is not from the way of the true ulama, the true scholars, or the true scholarly way, to water down the deen and say, oh, because I have rahmah for the people. Rather, one has to keep the deen, religious rulings intact, unless there's a difference of opinion. Okay? For example, a difference of opinion. Many hadith in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, in which the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever's lower garment, and he's speaking to the Muslim men, okay, it's referring to Muslim men, not Muslim women. Whoever's lower garment, sometimes he would use the word izar, okay, but whoever's lower garment is below his ankle bones, fahuwa finnar, it's in the fire. Whatever is below the ankles is in the fire. Allah doesn't look at someone who drags their garment below the ankle bone. In another narration, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't look at someone who drags their lower garment below the ankle bone out of pride. Not one, two, three hadith, many hadiths. So the scholars from the earliest times, and just to add to it, so you can see why it's such a difficult issue. Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu was known to have skinny legs, I mean really skinny. And sometimes it was a matter of laughing, people would laugh. Okay? Even though one time the Prophet said, his skinny shins are heavier in the scales of Allah than Mount Uhud. And because he was one of the most pious, one of the greatest scholars from the Sahaba. Forget about being one of the earliest Muslims, one of the greatest Sahaba in ilm. So, he did ask the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, can I not just keep it down, right down there? Because otherwise, if I raise it up, they'll laugh. And the Prophet didn't give him permission. They didn't give him permission. So the scholars, when they came to this, they thought, the scholars understood it two ways. And then finally, let me just put the hadith of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. So the hadith of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, that he's wearing some izar, some, like a lungi or something like this, some lower garment, and it's too loose for him. And it keeps slipping down, so it then goes so the lower bit, end bit, goes below his ankles, and then he pulls it back up. And then a few seconds later, it goes back down, and then he pulls it back up. And so the Prophet says to him, but you're not one of those who do it out of pride, out of khuyara. Khuyara is like kibr, out of pride. And he's trying to keep it up, but they're so loose, it just falls down. So the scholars looked at all of these hadiths, not one of them, not just one, but all of them, okay, and said, what do we understand from them? And the scholars divided into two opinions. One group said that if a Muslim man wears his lower garment, like trousers, thawb, a lungi type of izar or something like this, and he wears it such that the end of it is below the ankle, and he does that out of pride, okay, like the king will trail his cloak really long, and the longer the trail, because in the old days, right, you can't afford material to make even your sleeves this long, right? But I can find my sleeves like this and they're big and baggy. That shows you how much material I can afford. Which shows you how I'm pretty well to do, therefore. And I'm actually telling you I'm pretty well to do. Okay? So one set of scholars understood it like that. That if you do it with that type of kibr, pride, it's a major sin. And Allah won't look at the person who trails the lower garment out of pride. It's called isbal. In Arabic it's called isbal, trailing the lower garment out of pride. And they give more emphasis to the hadith of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, where it's going lower, And he's going along the process and said, but you're not one of those who do it out of pride. So they say it is recommended, mustahab or sunnah, for the lower garment to be raised above the ankle, but if it falls below the ankle, it's jaiz, it's allowed, but it's not haram. And that's the opinion of one set of scholars. Another set of scholars, just as learned, say that actually, in both cases, it's haram, which is why he doesn't give Ibn Mas'ud the permission to lower his garment. But they say that if one has the intention of pride and arrogance, then the haram is even worse. It's more haram. But if someone doesn't have it, just to do it itself is haram. And that's a valid opinion. Now in this case, and the reason why I'm on this is because I mentioned the fact that ulama should say the truth without watering it down, but not let the people despair. As opposed to, oh, let me make everything easy because I have so much rahmah for you. When people do that, it's not always a proof of rahmah or mercy or kindness. When there is a difference of opinion, generally the habit of the scholars, it's a scholarly etiquette to try to give the lay people something that they're more likely to be able to achieve. So they'll probably go with, it's better that you keep it above your ankles. You get so much reward, whatever. To give them the hope that if they don't, given their situation, then it's not the end of the world. Okay? And maybe individually they may say something, if let's say they follow the other opinion that it's not, then they may privately do that. Then this is okay, because there's a leeway. Okay? But where there isn't a leeway, then the ulama, the scholarly way is, we're obligated to say what it is, but in a way that gives people hope and doesn't make them despair. Not the way of changing. Our Mufti of the UK, of the whole UK, United Kingdom, Dawood Kamran, he recently said on TV, you've heard of Mufti Dawood, right? No? None of you heard of Mufti Dawood? What's his other name? Yeah, David Cameron. He's on he and many people like him think that some of the more traditional ethics and etiquettes of Muslims, he didn't mention these ones, but these are ones that the way that we have a particular view on gender relationships, and we have a particular view on sexuality. Okay, what types of marriages are halal, what types are not, what types of union between human beings are halal, what types are not. We have other bits and pieces like that. He feels that some of these things, not all of them, are actually like a conveyor belt to make people not appreciate British values and to go against, turn your back on British values. And once you begin to turn your back on British values, you might feel that you don't belong. And once you don't feel that you don't belong, you might feel aggrieved and negative towards the people. Once you feel negative, you might be seduced by a violent narrative to go and do something ISIS style, Khawarij style. He has his concerns. Wallahu a'lam. I suggest that we shouldn't dismiss them all, and I suggest we shouldn't just take them at face value. And the Muslims generally, they look at things with tafsir, with some detail. Okay, it's very rare that a human being's statement, especially if it's complex, is thrown away, accepted, lock, stock and barrel just like that, or thrown away without some mizan, without weighing it against Sharia and what is saying. So we're going to have, my point being is, we're going to have a tough time. Our children or our children's children will have probably a tougher time. So these are uncharted waters and tough times. But it's not a justification for watering down religion. It's just a justification that we need to get wiser in how we speak about Islam, what we prioritize, especially publicly and to the youth, and what we don't. Prioritizing something over another is not turning halal into haram or haram into halal, which we should avoid. The pressure from society is that they would like some of our harams to become halal. I mean, surely Muslims would better fit into society if we change riba from haram to halal. Surely we would be more in tune with British values if homosexuality was not a sin. Okay. Surely we will be better adapted to postmodern 21st century liberal democracy if we believe that there was no such thing as politics within Islam. Islam is just for the mosque. When you go out of the mosque, there's no Islam. Islam is not in the markets, Islam is not in the palace, Islam is not in parliament, Islam is just in the mosque. And that way we would fit perfectly. Okay? So the pressure will be on. Not necessarily, because they have got an agenda against Islam. It doesn't have to necessarily be that. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. Think in detail. Here I am, for example. I'm an arms seller. I sell arms. I don't sell arms, okay, just to let you know. I'm an arms seller, right? I have big business, second biggest business after the pharmaceutical industry in this world. Okay? So just like the pharmaceutical industry, they need people to get ill, right? All due respect. They need people to get ill, because if no one ever got ill, I mean, what do I do with all these tablets and medicines and whatever? Well, the same thing with arms industry. Same thing. It's not that they need people to get ill. They need wars to happen, right? Because if wars don't happen, what do I do with all of these tanks, guns, and rockets and whatever? So it's in their interest to, okay. So maybe I'm a very evil person and I'm an arms dealer and whatever, and actually maybe I'm very powerful. I might even be able to start a few wars here and there, maybe on small scales in some kind of failed state African country. Okay. So whether it's a Muslim or a Hindu or a Jew or a Christian or a Sikh or whatever who will come and stop that war, I'm going to have a problem with him. It's nothing to do with their religion. It's that actually they are now a barrier to it. So what I'm trying to say is, not everyone who is telling Muslims to liberalise and this and the other, they don't have an agenda against Islam as such. Okay. Some do and some don't. They just think, well, look, every religion has gone through the process of liberalising. We had Orthodox Jews and whatever, and then now we have liberal Jews. And liberal Jews are fine, Orthodox Jews are fine, but they struggle a little bit. The ultra-Orthodox ones, oh my gosh, we have to kind of be difficult. And the Christians, they had just, by the time 18th century came, we got liberal Christians. So yeah, it's 500 years behind, but hey, they sincerely believe this. Misguidedly, but sincerely. And then there are people who have agendas. If we don't have this way of thinking and we're looking at people in black and white, why can't people look at us black and white? His brother's got a turban, his brother's got a turban, he's got a beard, he's got a long beard. Must be ISIS. Must be. Right? Because ISIS have black beards and turbans, right? And they say, no. Do you have to look at all of us the same? We're angry, we're upset. We're thinking, have you got no common sense that, you can outwardly look the same, but inwardly be two different people? But we do exactly the same. Everybody, even though the Quran is clear, you have those non-Muslims who are an enemy. And they wish to fight Allah and the Messenger and the believers. And there are those who are non-hostile. Khalas, like you're Muslim and I'm not Muslim. Let's just try to get together and live together in whatever way we can. The Quran is sort of mumtahina, it's clear on this. And yet, we expect from others what we're not prepared to give others ourselves. So just to finish this, going back to the spiritual point, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in, they were an ajib people, they were just an extraordinary people. Which is why when we talk about the Sahaba, we don't talk about them as role models in the sense of these are things that we can achieve, because their level of doing things was just so remarkable. Allah handpicked them. Allah specifically handpicked them to be the ambassadors around his Prophet ﷺ, because he knew what they were made of. And in Sahih Bukhari you have that narration from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, in which he says to one of the tabi'un, one of the second generation Muslims, he said, never wish that you were amongst us. Iman sometimes rises the, I wish I was amongst the Sahaba, because then I'll be with the Prophet ﷺ, and I'll be able to do this, I'll be able to do that, and I'll be in that religious culture whereby it would have made me stronger. So Abu Hurairah notices that kind of shawq, that kind of yearning on this man, and he said, never wish that you were in our time. Because there were so many times in which, due to the opposition we had from the hostile non-Muslim, that people were boycotting us left, right and centre and doing this, that and the other, and we didn't have any food to eat for days or weeks, and sometimes we used to have to eat beetle leaves, and our dung, the feces, what would come, it came out all whatever colour it comes out when you eat just those leaves, which are not actually fit for human consumption. Because these are not like palm leaves, that subcontinent palm leaf, beetle. It's a beetle leaf, right? And you can eat that, right? Okay, minus the funny stuff in there. But these kind of leaves in there, they weren't meant to be consumed. This type of leaf wasn't meant to be consumed. So none of us should be like that. But the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum, what they did is that they used to be greatly concerned and used to make a lot of dua. Allahumma taqabbal siyamana, Rabbana taqabbal minna. All these du'as of qubuliyya, taqabbal, qubuliyya. Because they weren't fearful that Allah isn't generous and He will randomly just not accept. But they know that they could never have given the haqq to Allah as He deserves. It's all down to His rahmah and His fadl, His grace and His kindness. And we should be concerned like that too. And therefore, if we see a slackening in an issue or religious issues that Allah had helped us overcome in Ramadan, we should do our utmost to make tawbah to Allah and ask Allah, Ya Allah, You put me on the path of loving submission to You. Don't let shaitan and my ego take me away from that path. Go and tell people, your friends, the locals, we're not telling you off. But if Allah has shown you that honor of bringing you to the masjid, or of keeping you away from this sin, of granting you the ability to do that act of obedience, and that was honor from Him to you, why would you ever wish to remove the honor given to you by the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords? Don't dishonor yourself or humiliate yourself by going your own ways. If we need to prod them more, we can say and remind them that some of the scholars of the Salaf, some of the early Muslim scholars, they used to say, and this is the last thing I'll end with, they used to say, بِئْسَ الْقَوْمِ لَا يَعْرِفُونَ اللَّهَ إِلَّا فِي رَمَضَانِ. What a wretched people who only know Allah during Ramadan, when in reality all the months of the year belong to Allah, and Allah's generosity and mercy showers down in every month of the year, even if there is a particular month that it showers down more in than other months. So we want ourselves and others to come back to the path of honor, and if Allah gives us consistency, there is a hope that Allah is telling us He has accepted our deeds, but we can never be complacent. We can never be complacent, and those who give what they give, whilst their hearts tremble because they fear returning to their Lord. Those are the people who are not quite sure if they've got qubuliyya. That's what we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا صِيَامَنَا وَقِيَامَنَا وَعِبَادَتَنَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our fasting, our acts of worship, our praying. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of our deeds. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to do deeds of righteousness that please Him and to keep away from sins and transgressions. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us consistency. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us istiqamah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us battle our own egos and our own and shaitan who wishes to subvert us from the path. May Allah give us as an ummah in this country the wisdom and the insight to deal with the political difficulties gently, wisely, without haste. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow all of us to be directed by the ulama amilun. The ulama amilun, those who are the scholars who act upon their knowledge, who are truly the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because it is the awliya of Allah whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put on this earth to be beacons of light. But as regards to those of us who know Arabic and we have Arabic books at home, but we are not from the ulama, we need to be careful that we don't step over our limits because we have access to religious knowledge and thereby, through sincerity but negligence, misguide the ulama through warped and subverted fatwas. Nothing could be more dangerous to the welfare of Islam and the Ummah than that. Neither an outside enemy threat, nor anything other than those who change the very nature of Islam. We ask Allah for tawfiq and for protection. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wassalamu ala al-mursaleen. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Next week, I want to start a small book because I want to focus our learning now. We're going to start with something very simple. Two present-day scholars wrote a book called Agenda to Change Our Condition. Agenda to Change Our Condition. It's available in English as well. And in that booklet, a very small booklet, part of it, one of the chapters was 20 points of how to change our condition, make it better, individually and as a community with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 20 practical points. And so I'm going to leave the rest of the book and we're just going to do these 20 points. Okay? So we can find individual change and guidance for collective change as well, inshallah ta'ala. And we'll do 2 or 3 points every week. Within 10 weeks or 8 weeks, hopefully we can complete it. So please, we'll start that next week, inshallah. Agenda to Change Our Condition. We'll be doing that up until the next 2 months, inshallah. May Allah give us the tawfiq to do it and to complete it and to benefit from it. Any pressing last questions, or should we just, because it's just a small reminder today. If there's any pressing questions, we can, yes.
I don't know, sorry for the answer this next week. When you were saying about ulama watering down the religion of some ahkam, straight away the question of riba came into my head. I want to ask, is the reality this is it like two different opinions where like you've got green side and you've got ijma and you've got a hadith where the Prophet said to witness the movie with the naked eye, or is the issue with riba just a group of scholars got the ijtihad wrong and the other group are saying let's stick to the clear-cut verse where Allah says وَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا. Because many times people come to me and what do I say? Because I know in the verse Allah talks about riba being haram. فَإِلَمْ تَفْعَلُوا فَأْذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِنَ اللَّهِ. So you start a war with Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then you've got ulama who say it's allowed, but you only allowed to buy one house. But then they go against the verse, then another verse comes to my head. فَوَيْلُ لِلَّذِينَ يَكْتُبُونَ الْكِتَابَ بِأَيْدِيهِمْ. So what's the actual answer to this question?
The actual answer to the question is slightly lengthy, only because let's put people who ulama into 3 categories here, very quickly, and I'll give the detail maybe next week. There are those ulama who are just very firm in understanding the deen and in their religious practice. They're God-fearing ulama. And they give fatwas. It doesn't matter what pressure, from people or from politicians, they give the fatwa. The best that they know is taqwa fatwa on taqwa. Amongst those people, ulama who give fatwa based upon taqwa, upon fear of God, not upon seeking to please this group or that group. A minority of them understood the words of Imam Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu, that when the Muslims leave the Darul Islam and they enter the Darul Harb or the Darul Kufr, then some mu'amalat, such as transacting on riba, can be allowed. And so some of the ulama who give fatwa on taqwa, especially early on in this, in the 70s, they went with this. It's not the Hanafi position, it's a statement of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, Imam Abu Hanifa, even though his two companions, well-known companions, Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad, differed with him and no other scholar took that view. They based it upon this. The vast majority of scholars say that's an error in judgment, it's an error in fatwa. But we should make clear that that fatwa was based upon taqwa. It was just an error. It's erroneous. Even though there is some issue, what happens about some of the mu'amalat, some of the social hukums outside of Darul Islam into Darul Kufr? Is the had punishment, for example, some of the ulama said that the had punishment for stealing doesn't get applied when you're in the land of war. Okay, and there's reasons for it, and there's illah, there's rationales behind it. So this was one of them. But inshallah, what is correct is, for the reasons that you said, and since this is clearly the well-established position of the deen, that riba is haram, a penny or anything, whether we're here, whether we're in Muslim lands or non-Muslim, it's haram. But I want us to be clear that someone can make an error in fatwa, but that doesn't mean that they're wishy-washy. There are a group of people who became very affected with modernization, and in the late 19th century, like 1890s and the 1900s, they sought to really change a lot of the deen. Okay? That group of people is more problematic, because you can see why their fatwas are loose and they're pandering to someone. Okay? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us, forgive all of the ulama. But generally the ulama, bil jumla, they are people of taqwa, and their fatwas are fatwas of taqwa. We shouldn't think that 90% of the ulama are just wishy. No, 90% of the ulama, alhamdulillah. But there are pressures after all, and from the earliest times we've had individual few ulama here and there, always struggling to be loyal to the tradition, either getting too close to the palace or becoming too influenced by the masses or whatever. But by and large, the bulk of the ulama have always stood firm. So I wanted to make that distinction. Why? Because لحوم العلماء المسمومة. The flesh of the scholars is poison. If we backbite or we slander a scholar, khalas, we've only taken poison in ourselves. And if we find that our hearts die quickly, khalas. So it's better to critique the fatwa than the intention of the alim. And in this case, those of the few ulama who gave an allowance for the Muslims in non-Muslim countries to take riba, first house, you can do it. First car, you can do it. Two things. One, that doesn't have a sound backing in the nusus, in the text. And two, you give the lay people an inch, they take a mile. They take a yard. You give them a yard, they take a mile. Once a man and twice a child. It's biblical. They will always do that. And we actually found that's exactly what was happening. Okay, but alhamdulillah, many of those Sayyid ulama who used to have that, many of them have reverse. So inshallah ta'ala, and Allah knows best, the correct fatwa is riba is riba. Okay, riba, and it must be shunned at all costs, even though it does make life incredibly difficult in a riba-ridden world. But deen was never going to be easy. One final thing, and Allah knows best, I could be wrong, so this is not fatwa, this is just an advice, my ra'i, my opinion. I don't think it's possible to comfortably practice deen in a modern liberal democracy like the UK. I'm not saying it's impossible. Deen is for all times. This deen is for all times. And therefore, there is no age or no place except that the deen can be practiced. But this is not the society or the environment that helps the practice of the deen. It does completely the opposite. Therefore, when people say, yeah, I'm a practiced Muslim, I'm comfortably Muslim and I'm comfortably British, I think they've missed, either they're just saying it or there's something wrong with their practice. Rather, we can be comfortably British and uncomfortably practicing the deen, because in this environment it's very difficult to practice the deen, given the fact that even traditionally in this country, when things were haram, have all become halal. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's impossible. Alhamdulillah, up until as long as Allah wills, we can practice the deen here. We can pray, we can give zakah, we can fast, we can do so much. There are a few things we might not be able to do, but that's just a few. We can spiritually grow, we can purify our souls. That's get the nafs bit, all the things that. But to say that we can be comfortably British, what, comfortably watch TV? No, watching TV should be for Iman uncomfortable, because there are so many wrong things on there. What, comfortably walk down the streets of Britain in a summer's day? No, we can uncomfortably walk down, but we probably have to be making a astaghfirullah, and lowering the gaze. Otherwise what happens is that we will become used to sins without saying astaghfirullah. So we can be uncomfortably Muslims and comfortably British. I don't think it's possible to be comfortably Muslim and comfortably British, given the Britain as she is in the 21st century. We probably could have been comfortably British or English and comfortably Muslims in the 15 and the 1600s, though we would have probably been killed because we're not Protestant or Catholic, but that was another story. But morally, it's difficult. Okay. I just want to say that. Why? Because I am I consider myself English. I consider myself English, and I have no doubt, and I love my country that I was raised in. I love its literature, I love its poetry, okay? I love some of its good things, I have problems with some of its bad things. But Iman tells you, Sharia, regardless of your own weakness, Iman tells you that doing some things is a struggle, okay? Lowering your gaze, not an easy thing, right? Not an easy thing. Okay, probably if you're 70 or 80 it might be easy. If you're not, it's not an easy thing. Your ears not hearing haram, not an easy thing. Trying to make your rizq halal, it's not an easy thing. It's possible, but it's a struggle. Raising your family to be ethical, to love Quran, it's not an easy thing. You can do that when they're young, 7 or 8, when they're under your control, but by the time they're 9, 10, 12, whatever, khalas, and the world becomes their oyster, mainly through the internet and through social media. It's difficult. But these things can happen and have happened positively. So let's be positive, but let's not be naive. So that we become more needy for Allah's help. And not, you know what, it's all rolling along fine. If I feel that it's rolling along fine, it's probably because I don't know many harams. I know I shouldn't eat pork, shouldn't eat wine. There's so many Muslims who say, oh, I'm comfortably Muslim. And then when I have sat in their houses and I say, well, how comes you watch this thing on TV? Did you not actually know it's haram? Oh, we didn't know that. Actually, why do you have pictures on the wall? I didn't know that. Why do you? I didn't know that. Actually, they don't know anything apart from 1 or 2 things. So they found it comfortable. So that's fine. You can be comfortable when you don't know much of Islam, basic Islam. Once you know something of basic, otherwise the prophets would have been the first people to be comfortable, because they were the most pious of people, and they were the ones who could access the heart's best. But unless I'm mistaken, I'm not quite sure that there is a single prophet, alayhi salatu, that actually was comfortable with their society. Okay. and there's an ishara there. So may Allah give us tawfiq. We are British Muslims, or many of us are, but that doesn't mean that there's a comfortableness. It just means faith and dunya have to find a way of working it. And we are people of dunya and people of iman as well. Or people, worldly creatures as well as people of iman. We just need to balance something, inshallah ta'ala. Tipping more towards iman than dunya. That's what they do. Allah give us tawfiq. Let's end this the class. Jazakumullah khair. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi.